can't even remember what year that was. It was like a good few years ago, but that was like still back then. I was like, oh, I got this result, and people did start to help, and that was when I started to get the foot in the door and actually get like money and frames. Um, but you may have questions about how I changed into the more like, because there was like a point when I had this like, wait a second, which I don't want to ruin unless you have a
It
question.
was to my next question. Yeah, I'll ask it. Was there a point when you realized that you had to make a switch from being result focused to offering brands more than just results? And when was that point?
I'm glad you asked. So, uh,
Hello, my name is Morgan, and welcome to the Content Collective's Derailed podcast. This week I'm joined by Dan Wolfe, but before I go into explaining what me and Dan were talking about, just want to say a real quick thank you to extractcoffee.co.uk. A few weeks ago I was talking about James Hoffman, who's a kind of nerdy coffee YouTuber, and how I was kind of falling down that slippery slope myself. Someone from Extract Coffee was listening and sent us all a bunch of coffee samples, which were really good. If that was some kind of clever marketing trick, it has totally worked. I've bought a bunch of bags of coffee since then. It's really, really nice. Nicest coffee I've certainly had. And for anyone who's a bit of a coffee nerd, I would thoroughly recommend checking out extractcoffee.co.uk. They got a really nice website and stuff as well, and lots of coffee to choose from. So, Dan Wolfe, I really enjoyed my conversation with Dan. We talked about all sorts of different things. He's got a great personality, a lot of interesting things to say about all sorts. We talked about professional sport, kind of the realities of professional sport, and the real value of athletes as far as like the mountain bike industry is concerned. We go into his kind of background, how he got into riding, his racing history, what he was up to last year, what his plans are for this year and the future. But we had a really great conversation. I think you're going to really like it. I certainly enjoyed talking to him. If you do, please like, comment, and subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. And it means it's good. It's good for everyone. So we're going to jump in now to my conversation with Dan Wolfe. I hope you enjoy. Okay, cool. We might as well just start then.
yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm like haven't had a moment to chill today, so
You
yeah,
said
it's nice to sit down.
you're recording, or can you talk about that?
I can't talk about the specific bike, but yeah, I'm videoing for a new Polygon bike. So it's really exciting. Videoing with John Lawler, who videos all the Vital Raw footage for downhill
Cool.
World Cups. So yeah, very lucky that he's Irish, and that we can make this happen because we are in another lockdown, and it's obviously traveling. It's quite difficult right now. So it's cool having him close by and being able to do this. So yeah, I'm booked in with him for the full week.
Cool. You'll be filming all
Videoing,
weekend.
so
Fun.
it's great.
How have you been finding lockdown?
Yeah, you know what? Like, I'd be lying if I said I've been a consistent stream of positivity or consistently motivated, even. It can vary. I'm not saying it varies day to day. I found so far, if I set goals and then I complete them, there's an initial, like, yay period, which can last literally 2 days. And then if I don't have something else lined up, I do start to kind of let the like negative thoughts back in and kind of go, well, how long is this going to last? When is it? When can I see my mates? When is it appropriate to shake someone's hand, give them a hug again? So it's goal setting. With me, being an enduro racer, it's generally physical goals. So January was a lot of Zwifting. I tried to Zwift every single day. And then this month is starting a YouTube channel, walking 5K a day, and getting my bike launch out at the start of the month. So it'll vary each month, but I don't think we're in Ireland anyway. I don't think we're going to be out of like a proper lockdown or different restrictions until sometime in April.
Yeah, this one's definitely I've found a lot tougher than the last one, just because it seems more. I guess it was a novelty for everyone in the last one. It was obviously it wasn't like the winter, but this one is just the sort of my bouts of like lockdown depression are getting more like frequent, and yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, it can be really tough, and yeah, exactly like you said, the first one was a novelty. We also had great weather, and now we've had a few since, and you kind of come into this lockdown jaded, and you know it's easy to forget. You think, well, November, December, it might be bad weather, but it's honestly January, February, and sometimes even March. So having that kind of like being in a lockdown, coming into those months, it is harsh. Like I didn't ride my mountain bike once in January. It was all indoor training.
That's tough.
So thank God for technology.
How did you find the first one? I was talking to Greg Callahan last week, and he was saying he actually took quite a lot positive from it, especially as a sort of international athlete, someone that's traveling around all the time, and it's a huge change of pace, for people like yourself. How did you find the first one?
Yeah, I actually just like feel like I did really well during that lockdown, like mentally and even physically. I was probably the fittest I've ever been in my life. I felt like because I wasn't going anywhere, as in out of the country, I had no projects, like I had no real obligations bar post some Instagram clips, like just and replying to emails, and like nothing crazy. I was able to really focus on doing new things. So I got into road biking quite a bit now. I was really sticking to my initial 2K radius, and then it became a 5K radius, and I was literally doing 2 kilometer laps. Like some of my spins were 200 kilometers long.
No way.
Yeah.
Just going round and round.
Yeah, in a 2 kilometer back and forth.
So you weren't allowed to
even
allowed to cycle, or like, because I think here we can go like on foot, or we can cycle kind of as far as away as we want. We just can't drive somewhere, and then I think those are the rules anyway. So yours are slightly different.
Yeah, ours were you're supposed to stay within your 5K. You are allowed to like do some sort of physical exercise each day, but you are supposed to stay within your radius. And look, it's just a generalized rule. Like they're hoping overall that will have a greater impact. Now if you're a professional athlete and you have like say a letter from your governing body that it allows you to, if you were stopped by the police, it allows you to continue doing your profession. You have bigger radius. So luckily we've the Dublin Mountains, are really close to where I live. But back then they didn't have that, or at least I was not aware of it. And it was very much kind of frowned upon, I guess, or at least in my circle of friends it was. So I didn't mountain bike for quite a while in that lockdown. I just rode my road bike. And I actually really got into it. Like I had I've been thinking about doing an Everest challenge, which is just like climbing the equivalent height of Everest, but you can only do it on the same climb that you need to repeat. So you start at the bottom, you go to the top of that climb, turn around and just go right back down. And I kind of had that in my head, and I had a challenge during the first lockdown where I wanted to raise some money for a charity, and I cycled 15 kilometers vertically in 5 days on this one hill. So I did the hill like 165 times, and it was like over 600 kilometers of cycling. And like, it was just, I kind of started to lose my marbles a bit, but it kind of gave me that confidence, right? I think I could do an Everest in a day. Didn't really tell anyone. And then, I just started preparing for that. And then a month after I'd done that 5-day challenge, I went and did an Everest once we had the 5K. We'd been lifted from 2K to 5K range. So I picked a quiet hill that was quite steep. It was about 110 meters vertically, and I did it 85 times in a day.
Bro.
And
how long did it take you?
It took me, I think I was 12 and a half hours moving, and then under 15 hours, like total time elapsed. Because I started to chill towards the end. A few friends turned up to like cheer me along, because I'd done the whole thing solo, and I'd been I was like self-supported, so I'd put my car in the middle of the climb, and I'd have a break every hour and a half, like drink water, eat some food. But I got to a point where I didn't want to eat food. I couldn't. My stomach couldn't digest. I also didn't go to the toilet. Like, yeah, I did some wheeze,
Yeah.
but my body literally couldn't actually process food properly anymore.
Just
It was
because
really
of
odd.
just because of how like exerted you are.
Yeah, I think just the strain on your body, like it's by far the highest I'd ever climbed. Like I've done some big road cycles, and prior to that I'd done like a lot of like 100, 200k cycles in my like tiny radius.
Mm.
And obviously being an enduro rider, I have miles on my legs over the years, but I'd never climbed over like 3 or 4 thousand vertical on any kind of bike. So to well double that in a day, it gets pretty weird. Like when you're past 6,000 vertical, it's quite weird. And a lot of people seem to think because Everest is 8,884 meters or 48 meters, sorry, they seem to think it's 8,000 meters you have to climb. It's so close to 9,000 meters. So if you're doing an Everest challenge, you need to make sure you climb 9,000 meters to like
To do it.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, imagine uploading it to Strava afterwards.
Yeah, you're just 1 meter out.
Yeah. So yeah, so it was like really, really cool. But I had some friends that like do transcontinental cycling, and they filled me in on how to approach it, and like just being regimented and really kind of strict with when you have breaks. Even if you're feeling really good, you know, you've come up with a plan, stick to it. And then like when you start not wanting to eat food, you move on to like literally baby food, you know, like really mushy stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're basically just drinking it. So yeah, it was amazing. And like that's the thing, is like obviously this was back in May. It was a lot nicer then, and that's why the challenges now need to be tailored to what the weather's like outside, how many hours of light we have, etc.
So you found just having these sort of physical challenges has helped you through. Well, it sounds like the first one and this second one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we all we all need direction, and I'm anyone that's listening to this podcast, like obviously cycles, so we all need this, and it's much more than just a physical thing. We do need it for our sanity and our mental health, and our actual happiness, like our joy. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of essential I create these things, even if in a way they're meaningless to others, or it's like, well, why would you bother doing that many rides, or cycling that distance? Like, why not cycle this distance or take a day off or whatever it is? Like, if it makes you happy, or if it keeps you in a positive state of mind, or gets you through that day, or whatever it is, like I've some people, like mates, that get on to me and they're like, how are you staying motivated? I'm like, I'm not this perfect bloody thing. I'm like, I literally sometimes have to create motivation. I just get into my kit, sit on the turbo trainer, and then I'm on it and I go, okay, just pedal for 10 minutes. And you'll always do at least an hour.
Yeah, exactly. I used to do the same thing when I was, because turbos as well, like interval training is just like the worst thing to make yourself do. And especially when I first, like, as like a teenager and someone was telling me to do it, it was like, it used to be so hard to make myself do it. And then eventually I just realized, like, all you have to do is just, as you say, just go and sit. Like the first step is just to go and sit on the bike or set it up or whatever. And then it's like, you'd have to be really ashamed of yourself to do that step, to start pedaling, and then to be like, nope, and then get up after that.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing, is like, if you do get off the bike after that 10 minutes, it's for a bloody good reason. It means you really aren't feeling it today.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or, whatever it is. So I think it's just, sometimes it's knowing yourself, but it's just knowing these little tricks, and you acquire them over the years. And yeah, it's just kind of having a tiny bit of discipline as well, I guess. I'm not saying I'm like not naturally that organized. Girlfriend's always giving out to me about it, because I am pretty bad. But if you can like have these little things you do either daily or whatever that will have a positive impact on you, then go for it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're talking as well about the sort of like all of these challenges are almost purely physical. And like for me too, you know, it's kind of the case for a lot of mountain bikers because mountain biking is this sort of skill-based thrill that we all really enjoy. But anyone that's like raced, the thing that's almost more powerful than like it's always, you know, great to go out on your bike, whatever. But if you're not able to do that, what you still have left is just like is the kind of training, and it's like the training is almost like just doing just purely sort of physical things is so grounding. It's like one of the best things I got personally from racing, you know.
Yeah. Oh, like 100%. I mean, we're made to move. It's primitive, and yes, you know, we didn't cycle bikes thousands of years ago, but we are made to move, and our body, you know, sends chemicals to your brain going, that was great when you exercise. So um I think it's key, and it's like something I always like fall back into. And I guess, you know, in school, I wasn't, I mean, if I wasn't as lazy about it, I could have been academically decent.
Yeah.
But I always preferred to go down, like I was really into art and I was into my sports. So I always kind of went for that because maybe it was an easier option because I was good at it and I preferred it. Maybe that was like a factor. But yeah, I mean, like going forward, I am going to be starting a YouTube channel. I'm like, right, well, that kind of nearly looks like homework to me now, but it's the next step. And I think each year, even if you want to stay current or feel like where you are in the bike world, you deserve to be there, then you need to be progressing every year. And that's not just like, oh yeah, I'm a little bit quicker up that climb. I'm a bit quicker down that track. Like in the bigger picture, I need to progress each year. So I think that's kind of, now that all the bikes are released and I'm on top of those things, I think that's like the next thing. So it's, yeah, I guess it's not necessarily going to be not a physical challenge, more of a studying and learning new skills. So that'll be like the other side of the coin.
Totally, yeah, yeah. I definitely want to talk to you more about that kind of stuff. But I also it'd be just great to hear a little bit about your kind of background and how you got into writing, and sort of when that sort of stuff.
Yeah, actually talking to John Lawler about that today, because when I started biking, John Lawler, Glenn O'Brien, Colin Ross, and they were all the big dogs in Ireland. So you know, the people that, you know, you rock up and you're looking up and you're like, oh, I can't talk to him, you know, he's amazing. So we were joking about that, but when he was actually getting out of racing seriously and getting into videoing, that's when I started. So I think it was 2002. I would have had I was properly racing, because the first bike I got, I snapped it before I was able to start racing. I snapped it fully in half.
Really?
Which was really painful, but it's nice to have that under your belt on your first bike, you know. Like I've snapped a bike in half.
Yeah.
But yeah, how we got into it specifically was me and my brother and my cousin, we got an MBUK magazine, and it came with a free video, and it was all Martin Aston doing trials, and we were just like, what the hell is this? This is insane. So we had BMX at the time, and we used to set up like pallets on bricks and jump off it. But we started bringing our BMXs up the mountains, and quickly, you know, found out like you can't be doing this. And then Santa came with bikes. I snapped mine. We got a better bike, and that's when I started racing. So I was like the last year under 14s basically when I started mountain biking, and it was all downhill back then. I mean, there was XC, but just the way my brain and my brother's brain was wired, it was all jumps.
Totally,
you know?
yeah.
So yeah, it was downhill. And then I did that throughout school while juggling other sports, but then downhill won. It like was all consuming. And then it was actually towards the end of college. I'd never really applied myself fully when I was a downhill rider. I never actually trained per se, or I never had a lifestyle that made the training seem like I wasn't training. As in now, the way I ride, it's training technically, but I also love it and I'm used to it, and it makes sense, and there's like multiple reasons why I find it easier now, whereas back then, you're in college, and like no one in my college rode bikes, so it was just me. And will I go on the night out? And if you go on the night out, like, I know hangovers weren't that bad back then, but it's easier not to go out riding on the
Totally,
Saturday
yeah.
morning then.
Mm.
So I wasn't like, I was nowhere near as committed as I am now, but I was very much results orientated back then, and not like I am now, which would be kind of like the opposite. But back then, that's all we knew.
Mm.
So I, so at the end of college, I put in a lot of training from the winter of my last year in college, knowing that once I hit that summer, that was it. I was going to like take it really seriously. So I had been in amazing shape. I was like the fittest I'd ever been at that point. I joined a roadie club, so I was doing that, which, before, and I don't know what the culture like was in the UK, but in Ireland, if you're doing road or XC, when you're a downhiller, was a bit like, oh, why are you doing that? But I was like, I'm not going to have any airs or graces. I'm going to do whatever it takes.
That's interesting. What sort of year that would be, like 2008, 2009?
Yeah, so 2008 was Val di Sol World Champs, so I was still in college. So it was 2011 when I injured myself in Lebrez. But yeah, I mean, like from 2007, I started college in 2007. So yeah, onwards.
So this, when you were saying like I'm committing to this now, what sort of that was switched when you were still
that was
racing downhill?
2000 and yeah, and that was from 2010 into 2011. I started like properly doing road cycling, and I didn't have an enduro bike or trail bike like back then. It was either downhill bike, BMX, or road bike. So I rode some skate park, and because if you ride enough BMX, you always find a way. It gives you an extra confidence on a mountain bike, and there's always something translatable. So did that, and then I was like, we have a place not too far from us. It was about a 45-minute drive from the family home that we do shuttles, and my dad was brilliant, so he'd be bringing my brother there on the weekends, and we'd be doing uplifts, and had the head screwed on. But yeah, and then that summer we'd done some IXS cups, and I top 10'd like all of them, even if I had a bad run. And I don't know if it was the year before, I like came fourth in the German downhill champs, like all this, like we were away for the summer. And then at Lebrez Downhill World Cup, which prior most World Cups, it was definitely like a flip of a coin. If I'd qualify, I'd either just miss out or just get in. But I was feeling really good, and I was like finally kind of not looking at it like a World Cup. I was like, if this mountain was in Ireland, how would you ride it? If you're with your mates, how would you ride it? So I was like being myself. I was riding my bike. I wasn't tight, because you can, unless you have a really well-trained eye, you could see just a few riders go by, but you can't tell the difference. But it just adds up, and all of a sudden that rider's 10 or 15 seconds quicker.
Totally, yeah.
So I was feeling good, but on my last practice run, my chain slipped as I went to sprint out of a corner, but I was like leaning into it. So I was like fully pressed into the handlebars. And as it slipped, I got booked, and I did just like a big rolling endo and over the bars and separated my shoulder. And it was when that happened, I was just like, F this, F that. I'm like, because I'd put so much into it, and I guess it just frustrated me, and I actually separated my shoulder, and then I called it for 2 years mountain biking, because it just upset me that much. But also looking back, I think it was a young person thing as well. Now I'm glad I stopped for a time, and I moved to America, and like with some friends, and I did the normal person thing, which I always say is like, if you're a non-cyclist, the normal people stuff. But I reckon I should have done that a little bit sooner. I guess if you want to be a serious racer, it's like you need to commit fully, and you will not get the results until you've committed fully. And even if you have, you still may not. So you will never know unless you put it all in. And obviously that's very scary, because a lot of people like to go, oh yeah, but I didn't do this and I didn't do that. So, I can never say I fully tried, and therefore like I'll never know if I just wasn't good enough, because I think that's a scary thing, is like if you put everything in there and you still weren't good enough. So yeah, it was that time away kind of gave me time to think and breathe and just enjoy bikes for what they were, and then come back to them. And enduro had started to kick off as I was getting out of the downhill.
Mm.
And so when I came back, we'd already had a full year of world enduros. And then I finally got a bike halfway through that year, and I might have done one. And it was the following year I started to kind of do more. And then I just went from there.
When you mentioned like the sort of commitment needed to try and make a career in downhill, and I was talking to Greg Callahan quite a lot about this in our last podcast, because I had a similar experience kind of to you racing the World Cups. Like, I kind of committed like everything to it, sacrificed a lot, but had some years where I was, kind of getting some good results, and then my last year racing was just mediocre the whole year, and then after that it was like I just didn't really sort of care anymore. But for me, the thing, and it's curious, and then I went to sort of similar to yourself, just went and had a sort of normal life, which was really good fun,
Yeah.
especially after just being, I'm just wondering, like, how much, like, had you sacrificed when you were, like, how, I'd imagine you're spending your winters working, training, what were those like off seasons like while you were racing the World Cups?
I think, like, and this is being honest, I was still a bit fearful of like going all in. And I also think I was a little bit more immature, because when I was younger, I was tapped. I had no fear. And I think I relied on my talent. And that's not being arrogant. I am a different rider now. I see the dangers. I see what can happen. I've had a lot of injuries. And I think if you have enough injuries, your brain changes a bit. You kind of go, hang on a second, like, I want to ride in such a way that I can replicate that 100 times and stay on the bike. And so I've changed as a rider and I've become a bit cleaner. But going back to the first point is, I think I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder, because I was like, I'm the fast brother, and my brother Jer is the worker, and we always could be similar, but he'd work harder than I had to. So then when I worked hard that winter, and it was a combination, like, obviously being in college, I did painting jobs, like I painted people's houses. If it was winter, I only, like, you'd want to be a lunatic in Ireland to paint the outside of your house in winter. But so it was all like inside stuff. And then I trained. I was like, I'd be on the turbo trainer nearly 5 times a week. I went like full ham. I was a single guy as well. And I have a lot of like, for me, exercise is a great escape. So I was always, if there was something on my mind, or I was worried about something or whatever, I just train. I just cycle. So I literally like turbo train 5 days a week. I do a big road ride on a Saturday and then downhill on a Sunday. And I actually did that all through winter. And then I'd work. Then if jobs came up, I'd substitute the like riding on the weekend for the jobs, because my dad was a builder. He's retired now, but he'd kind of line things up for me. Go, here, you can make a few hundred if you do these few rooms for this lady or whatever. And I'd go, okay, grand. And I'd go in, and sometimes I'd leave college and go, and actually, if the people were cool, which most of them were, and I'd actually paint from about like 6 p.m. until about 10 or 11 p.m. sometimes, which is really weird. But I did that. So then I'd have my weekends. So it just depended on either the job or what training I wanted to try achieve. And then my dad, credit to him, was great. Like, he'd actually drive with us and go away with us. So it was really like the money to say, get all the entries. He'd always take care of the food then, and getting there, and then just like help with all the accommodation, and just keeping the bike in one piece. Then again, my dad, with the gift of the gab, if you could turn up to a World Cup with a full bike, I'd leave with a full bike, because he'd go to everyone if I ever broke anything, and he'd talk the head off them and we'd get free parts. So I definitely think my story isn't like the hardest of the stories, but yeah, I mean, I did work for it, and I think I paid in blood or broken bones or whatever you want to say. But
do you think then you kind of just you just got burnt out a little bit? Like that last off season was just a bit too intense, and then you weren't. It didn't seem like there was much of a reward at the end of the day.
Yeah, because at the time I went from like I was qualifying in World Cups. Not every one. If I crashed, I wouldn't qualify. But I was qualifying. I was doing okay at World Cups without training. I didn't train. I would just ride a downhill bike sometimes, and then if the dirt jumps were dry, I'd ride them. And like, yeah, my brother used to be like, Dan, like, do stuff, you know. So I definitely relied on being a bit of a lunatic and just being young, because when you're young, you have a natural fitness. You have more of a sprint fitness. Like I couldn't do a 10-minute descent to save me, but I could wing it. And then when I put all the effort in and like, you know, the lads I was doing road cycles with were like, you could race, like you could race a road bike. You're pretty good. I was like kind of going into these races thinking I deserve results. Do you get me? And I know it, like I didn't have any kind of clean race run up until La Breze, and I was like, this is where it's all going to happen. And even though, like, looking back, I was like, you know, top 10 at IXS Cups, like, are grand, like, they're good, you know, like, you don't turn your nose up at it. But at the time, I just put in so much more work than I ever had. I expected a lot more. And you know what? Like, that's not always the case, and it shouldn't just happen in a year. But I was kind of young, I guess, and I felt hard done by when my chain slipped and I got that injury, because it wasn't me making the mistake. It was a mechanical, and it's actually quite hard to accept. It's easier now because I'm older and more mature, but it's harder to accept injuries when you're young from mechanicals. So yeah, when that happened, I was like, "Feck this." But I think if like I hadn't had that injury, I probably like. Well, you never know, but I may have continued in that vein, I guess, for a while. But as you know, like it's not all about results anymore. And you can chase and chase and chase, and it can burn you out and burns people out at various points.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, did you then, when you were training for these World Cups, I'd imagine this to be the case, you had it, you wanted to be a professional mountain biker?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So then,
now, I didn't understand fully how to go about
well,
it.
that's my next question actually, is like
Yeah.
how, because I know when I was young, and this is kind of what I want to talk to you about, like when I was doing, it sounds as well like we had actually got a very similar experience of racing the World Cups. I was very much the sort of purist. Like I saw Instagram and all that kind of stuff as just like, I was like, nah, I don't want to just, I saw it as like kind of showboating and whatever. And I was just like, nah, I'm going to just race, focus on my training or whatever. So how have your ideas on what it takes to be a professional, how have they changed since those seasons racing the World Cups?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. It's kind of gone from companies seeing talent and investing in the rider to you create something for companies that's sellable or that can bring value to them, and then you just go to them as this overall package and you go, put me on your stuff and I can bring value to your brand. Whereas you still actually see some French enduro teams, some French downhill teams are actually doing it the old-fashioned way, which is scouting talent and bringing them onto a team. And you kind of go, who's that? I've never heard of him. I've never heard of her. But it always happens in about 2 years from then, they're savages. Because they've been brought up through a program. They've been surrounded by fast riders. They've been shown how to approach training, how to eat, stretching, recovering, all of that stuff, bike setup, working on their bikes, actually having bikes that work. Whereas, you know, in Ireland, there wasn't really those opportunities. You actually had to become a globally recognized rider first, or else you wouldn't get anywhere. So it's definitely a case of like chicken or the egg, but it was more just like, you're an egg. You're never going to grow into a chicken. I don't know what I'm saying. I haven't thought that through, but basically, yeah, in Ireland, like we didn't know any better. No one told us how to do it. We just thought, oh, if you're like Jamie Poppin or Ben Reid, you just go really, really fast and then a team will just pick you up. But like looking back, it's so naive because it's not really how it works. I mean, it worked a little closer to that back then than it does now, but it's more layered. It's more complicated. Like you need to schmooze, you need to talk to people in the pits, you need to know people, you have to have the right contacts.
Totally, yeah.
You
Yeah,
have to be able to sell yourself,
I
which
was
takes confidence.
exactly. Yeah, I was talking to someone just about this exact thing because I was thinking, like, imagine if I had a child that was into mountain biking, I would just know because I had to kind of figure it all out for myself. And by the time I started working it out, I've kind of I see as with age much more clearly what I was so wrong about as a sort of intense, obsessive teenager. But someone like Tanny Seagrave and her dad, like, and a lot of the most successful, like the most successful athletes, like a lot of times, it's a parent or a brother that just has a few, just understands how the industry actually works. So like, and she's a really good example because, I mean, I think I'm sure you were probably the same. Like I knew about Follow My Dream and Tanny Seagrave before she'd even raced a World Cup. So that he created this kind of like hype around it and so well kind of marketed, even the name Follow My Dream, it's something that people can kind of get behind. But at the time, I didn't understand any of that stuff at all.
Oh yeah, I didn't really get it. I was very much like, there was a year I think I won every Irish downhill race I entered and stuff like that, and I was like, no one can beat me here. And I go abroad and like maybe I wouldn't necessarily live up to my own expectations, but I'd be like, why am I not getting more help? And then obviously back then it was proper heyday of UK downhill racing. Not to say that there's still an insane amount of top downhillers in the UK, but the race series back then was world class, and you'd be kind of going over and maybe doing okay in some of them, but more so you're just like, well, there's so many pros in the UK, like why can't they just kind of help us out, like a few Irish? But you're just so blind to it, you don't get that the reason you're not going to help is because there's so many more people in the UK that ride bikes, and a company's only going to sponsor who you have an impact on, and they're just going to presume you only have an impact in the Irish market. And if the Irish market at the time was only 1,000 or 1,500 people max of like really into it mountain bikers, then what good is it to them? And that's like, they're things that I don't know. Maybe I could have been told that back then, but I don't know if I would have even understood it, because you're like, yeah, but I'm really fast.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but that doesn't matter. And well, look, it matters. It's great to be fast, and it's like, but if you want to become a pro, it's not the only thing that matters.
Totally, yeah.
And certainly not now. Like now, it's like changed, and I honestly think it's going to continue to change quicker. Yeah, I think it's like only going to get more diverse as we go forward.
How then do you look at professional sport, and what's your thoughts on the difference between racing bikes and selling bikes? As an athlete.
Yeah, that's good. I think if you are a top racer, I mean, in enduro, you need to be a consistent top 10 or at least top 5 to make that true impact of like, I need that bike, I'll be like Jesse Mellement. Or a downer, like, I need to get a Specialized with Olan's, because if I have that, I'll be closer to Bruni, because they're like at the pinnacle and they work so hard on themselves and their bike. So like, it's just a well-oiled machine and it looks insane and it does rub off. But then there's the lifestyle aspect of like bringing your own personality into it, or the joy of biking, or even being a little bit shite. If you're not actually unreal, you're more, it's more possible. Like it kind of makes things more accessible. It's more believable. It's obtainable. Like you can one day get to that level. Shite's probably not the right word for it, but I mean, a 5-minute track following Bruni, he'd lose you kind of after 2 minutes, and you'd finish 20 or 30 seconds behind him. So it's not shite. Sorry, it's like still incredibly quick, because these guys are phenomenal. Like top women, top men, unbelievable. but being like a level that you're pretty competent, but you're selling more than that because you're selling like a lifestyle. Like, look, you can do what I do. It is possible. And sometimes like that actually has a much bigger reach, unless the top athlete, like racer, who's a results driven rider, unless they have a great personality that, and it's allowed to be broadcast. Because there was a time for a while that you didn't see as much of Bruni's personality, for instance. So remember when he was a junior and you saw the funny videos and he was real kind of quirky and you're like, oh, he's quite weird, I like him. And then there was a time when he started to like, he already really wanted to win that bloody World Cup, any World Cup, just win one. And there was a time kind of when it wasn't as much about his personality. It was just like, we just want to see Bruni win a race and be quick. And now it's kind of gone for full circle. Now he wins all those races and can win a race on any given day, but we're getting to see a more relaxed person.
Yeah, totally.
So we're always changing. So is the industry, but even those riders are taking a note out of, because like he even got TikTok last year during lockdown. You know, he's trying his hand at some YouTube stuff. Like I'm just using him as an example because mentioned him, but like there is ways of being a hybrid. And in fact, like if you've the ability to do it all, great, because it's going to be the most lucrative. Yeah, like there's definitely, it's blurry, I guess. Like you can really blur the lines in multiple directions, but there's a lot of scope to make some money in the bike industry still.
Yeah, it seems like for a lot of athletes, like apart from the people who could win, say at an EWS, you know, on any given day, there's probably 5 or 10 people that could win that race. And they're kind of like, to my mind, it seems like they're the ones that are paid to get good race results. And everyone else there is kind of, for them, the racing is like, it's like their pursuit, you know, it makes them a good rider, which adds value to them, but it's not like the companies care too much about who's coming, you know, 15th or like, and those are incredible results. To come 15th is like a ridiculous.
I want to stop you for a sec. So this is the thing, and you have like a great so you're able to stand outside and look down and analyze this now because you like understand it all. But the thing is, there's still so many people racing every sport that aren't top 10 or 20, 30, that their sponsors, or they believe like their sponsors like truly sponsor them only for their results. Because they may be on that upward curve, they may eventually get there someday, or even if they don't, like there needs to be the numbers to create the top 10. There can't just be 8 people. There needs to be that depth of field. It keeps the competition high, and there is. But I honestly think there's still a decent amount of people that think that, well, amongst your peers, sorry, I mean, even a top 100 at a World Enduro, it is incredible. And if you're doing solid top 50s, and even if you have a bad weekend, you're like, oh, I punctured that stage, or I lost my bloody pedal and then I found it. And you're like, you still came top 50. Like, it's incredible. But you are right. Like, you need to be, say, a solid top 20 continuously to just have that, like, oh, yeah, that's the fast guy or girl. But there's so many people outside of that that want to be in that maybe they're doing the YouTube and Instagram stuff to like supplement it, but like their goal is to be in that bubble. So there's still a lot of people, and I guess that's why we still have races.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't think that the races are going to go anywhere, because in a way, if we're all talking about like, oh yeah, exposure and bringing good times and personality, and like you could be as quick as me to the audience, then why do we need races? But we do, because it's inherent in a lot of people. Most of us got into the sport because we have a fiber of competitiveness about us, which can change as you get older, or you know, it can increase or decrease. But I do think the races are always going to be there. I just think that.
I guess as my question is more like, I absolutely agree. I think racing is a lot of fun. Like it's a focus. It's so much, and you learn so much through it. I think my point was more just like, as far as professional sport is concerned, like the races would be there whether there was professionals or not, because it's a fun thing for people that would do. But the value, as far as like professional sport is concerned, the value of any of those racers is either in their amazing results, top 5 or whatever, or in them being really good riders and proving that at the races, but then also doing all this other stuff that you're talking about and kind of marketing themselves.
I think they're really valuable and this is actually kind of one of those differences I touched on earlier, like the old school difference. They're really valuable if the companies utilize them. So if the companies market them well on their behalf, because they're like, look, they're the racer, they're dealing with their stuff. We are now going to like jump on these results that they just got recently and just push. When a new bike's released, go, this bike, like it has World Cup winning technology, or last weekend on its first Downhill World Cup, it just won. So like in that direction, instead of the influencers way, like a YouTuber, an Instagram personality, they're pushing themselves, and by association, they're bringing exposure to the brands. I think that's where the difference lies, is like, we are paying you to be really fast and athletic on a bike. So, and if we're paying you this much, we're also going to sell the bejesus out of you. And some companies, it's funny, like they pay some riders unreal, and I'm like, they're not utilizing them. So this isn't just like, across the board, like, oh yeah, if they're getting paid a big wage, like the company really stands behind them and just uses them. Some companies don't. But I reckon that's probably the difference, is like when the companies invest that much, they're like going to promote them. And then the other side is like the kind of influencer side is like, well, I'm self-promoting, but by association, you come along for the journey and we all win.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. That's a good kind of distinction. Like some athletes are paid, and the onus is on the brand to market them, whereas others are kind of paid because they're taking that responsibility off the brand. They're kind of marketing themselves with the company's product.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, they're like their own like manager, their own PR. Like they're all like in one, and then they have like things like they might earn money through YouTube or different avenues. So they've kind of this like, even though they're working for that, it's nearly like a passive income, which then takes the pressure off, and they become this kind of, it's like a different entity. And then when what they're offering brands, like obviously then is very, very different to the downhill. So some of them end up getting jobs in the industry to actually like corral and work with top athletes and the talent. But that term now, the talent, has changed. I mean, like look at Matt Jones.
Yeah, exactly.
Look what, and Pilgrim, and like those boys are bringing in more than what any sponsor could give them.
Yeah,
true difference.
I know it's nuts. I was watching Matt Jones has a Lamborghini, a Porsche. It's crazy. I mean, he is one of the best. He's doing he's got the tricks as well to back it up. But that money's coming from his marketing, his YouTube, and I'd imagine.
Yeah,
it's a combination.
And I reckon
of both, I suppose.
It's a combination, and I think that's the thing is like, and I still like to see, if I watch kind of any kind of influence or whatever, like I still like to see good pace, or if they're supposed to be slopestyle, proper tricks, good style, clean landings. Like I'm still like probably a stickler for that, which is, I guess, just the way I came into the sport. I still can't fully grow out of like, oh no, they can just have a personality and love bikes, but they can kind of be crap. I'm still a little bit like, I need to grow in that area, I reckon. But I do also think that's part of why Matt Jones and Sam Pilgrim are so good. Pilgrim can ride a shopping trolley over a bigger jump than I could. So it's like, it doesn't matter what keyboard warrior is sitting behind the screen. They have to kind of go, yeah, credit where credit's due. And he's amazing and he's fun. So that's probably why they've such a big following, is like they are killing it in every direction.
Someone like, I mean, the kind of ultimate example of that is Fabio Widmer, who's the most, I mean, he's like 6 million. I mean, he's like, that's a big YouTube account, not just for mountain bikers. That's just a big YouTube account as like for anyone.
Yeah. Anything over 2 million, like in any genre, like is huge.
Yeah. And then he's also got he's doing riding that, as you say, I'm kind of the same. I remember the first time I came across him, it was that Great Escapes 2 or something. It's kind of a cheesy, they produced and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? And then just the stuff he was doing, I was just like, oh my God, this is it's like the gnarliest writing I've ever seen.
You can't escape the talent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Easy it is or whatever it is, just like, oh my God.
It's nuts.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and then it's just investing back in himself. So he's got these big crews behind him, and it's just like getting good people around you, and then just like you're earning from these YouTube videos. Okay, let's not sit here being complacent. Reinvest. Like now, have a full-time person videoing for you, and like so on and so forth. So a lot of smart cookies out there.
Totally. What's your thoughts on? So you were racing downhill. You took a break
Yeah.
for a year or two, and then you made the switch to enduro. And it was at a time when it seemed like quite a lot of downhillers were making the switch to enduro, and it definitely, I got a sense of like, it seemed there's more depth in terms of there's more money to be made further down the rankings in enduro than there was in downhill.
Yeah.
Was that part of your decision to race enduro, or did you just kind of prefer the format of that?
So it was a kind of combination of a few things. I wanted a fresh start in a way. I also did think it would be more lucrative, or I felt like with downhill, trying to be a World Cup level rider when you've only 2 max 3 minute long tracks in Ireland. And also those tracks are very like kind of tech, and they're a different style. It's not like a downhill World Cup. It's nothing like that. So I was like, right, well, unless I'm going to move to the Alps, I'm never going to really be fully prepared. So I was like, right, I'll go down this avenue. Greg Callahan had, signed initially with Dirt Norco, and then from there, I think it was straight to Cube then. And I was like, right, like there's hope. Someone's done it. It can be done, but I still had that old mentality of like, I was results driven. I was like, I want to do well. The goal was to do top 10s and try get to that point, So I still had like no clue of like, it's about bringing exposure or value to a brand. And it does not always have to be, hey, look at this page. It says I came 10th. Help me,
Totally, yeah.
And sorry, like that's also not to belittle the racers, because I did this for like decade and a half or whatever. Like I've done so many races, and it's just like it can be a bit kind of tiring because you feel like you're going around in circles. And I was starting to get to that point again in the Giro race, and I was like doing a lot of like 30ths and occasionally like 20 something, and then I'd like have a mechanical and I'd be back out there a bit, and I was like, oh my God, like I need some sort of breakout results or else it's not going to happen. And then the World Enduro came to Ireland, and I dislocated my elbow.
Just before the race or during it?
A few days before it.
That's gutting.
But I cut the cast off, and like taped it all up and took painkillers and raced anyway. But that was like really gnarly because I raced blind, and I actually was so weak at the end. I was getting like lightheaded and stuff, because when you have a really bad injury and you try to do anything like that's exerting, your body's already drained. So that was kind of gnarly. But it was like, luckily the following year I got a top 10 in the World Enduro in Ireland, and obviously like it being in Ireland is great. And people can say what they want, but like it was still a fast ride. And then I can't even remember what year that was. It was like a good few years ago, but that was like still back then. I was like, oh, I got this result, and people did start to help. And that was when I started to get the foot in the door and actually get like money and frames. But you may have questions about how I changed into the more like, because there was like a point when I had this like, wait a second, which I don't want to ruin unless you have a question.
It was my next question. Yeah, I'll ask it. Was there a point when you realized that you had to make a switch from being result focused to offering brands more than just results? And when was that point?
I'm glad you asked. So, yes, there was a point, and it wasn't like a complete light bulb moment, but it was one injury that set off a chain of events, and from that, a kind of if I can curse you, can you beat me out at some point?
Yeah, no, we don't mind. Chris will deal with it.
There was a fuck this moment
Yeah.
from that initial injury, and it was everything after that. I just looked at everything differently. So basically, I had a bad elbow injury. I broke the head of my elbow off, and then the bone that broke off severed my tendon. So my tendon detached, and my tricep like raveled up my bloody arm. So that was really grim. Had to get surgery. I was told I wouldn't or shouldn't ride or do anything crazy. It could even take a year for recovery. I was back on the bike 6 weeks from surgery. I raced the Derailed National Champs because I was a lunatic. I was able, because it was a short track, to mostly use my right arm and my legs. I came fifth in elites on a trail bike, which is hilarious because it just should have been an early track. I shouldn't have been able to ride it. So anyway, that kind of gave me this false confidence, and I tried to race the last 2 World Enduros. I ended up breaking some bones in my right wrist, dislocating a shoulder because I had no tricep on my left arm. It was just like zilch because it wasn't growing back properly.
Yeah.
Because when it detached, I think my body just wrote it off. And it was from coming back too early, trying to do those races, wrecking myself. I said, right, I'm not riding my mountain bike. This is at the end of the year now. I'm not riding my mountain bike until my tricep is huge and I can do 10 dips in a row under my own weight, not assisted. So got to that point, and it was during all of that I was like, wait a second, I'm just gonna, or sorry, it was a little bit before that I already dipped my toes into it, but as I was doing that weight training, I was like, no, I'm going in this direction. I'm staying in this direction. So what I started to do was, when I was injured and I couldn't ride, I still went to Whistler, and I got onto Kate Ball, Chris Ball's wife, and she runs a hell of a lot of stuff for the World Enduro. She's unbelievable. And I said, Kate, can I run the Instagram for race days, or sorry, all practice days and race days? I did that. I did that at the following World Enduro, and then I even did some of it at one of the World, because they had one World Enduro booked up, but I actually did it while I tried to race the other one. And it was from that I was like, I actually really enjoy this. I'm bringing value to myself now because I'm somebody at this event, or there's a reason why I'm here, not just to get a result. There was a reason, and I just got the right contacts in Pink Bike and created a fairly convincing argument why I have to run their Instagram at World Enduros. And then I went for Pink Bike because they're the biggest cycling website in the world. I just was like, feck it, going for the top. And Kate was like, great, thanks so much. And she helped me with the contacts, and just went for the throat. And they got back to me, and we did a bit of a tester, and then they're like, yeah, we'll get you to run our Instagram for the year. And then I did that, and that was 2 years ago. And then it was just seamless into last year. Now, obviously last year was pretty cut short, but now going forward, I'm going to be running their Instagram stories and running creating video content for their YouTube channel and homepage at World Enduros. So yeah, it's managed to grow, but it was from that elbow injury. I was like, I can't keep wrecking my body for nothing. I always I'd always felt like in the past, it was always worth something. If I hurt myself, I was like, it's okay. I'm going to get better. I'm going to be faster. And that injury, I was like, no, I can't keep doing this for I'm not getting enough money for this, or I'm not getting any money for this.
Totally.
What's the value? I can't be, and I really didn't want to end up being one of those lads that or people in any discipline where they just should have called it a few years ago and just saved themselves the heartache. And not to be defeatist. I mean, I'm clearly not, because I just didn't stop. But I didn't want to fall into that category of he should call it. That was kind of a backward thought, maybe a motivator to just get creative and figure something out. But as you can tell now, I love talking. And it was when I started working with World Enduro and bringing kind of people behind the scenes, I was like, oh my God, I love this. And also, so many people crave the behind the scenes stuff
Totally, yeah.
because they're fans of the sport. And the sport sometimes comes across very polished, but it's not. It's a mountain bike race and stuff happens like rain, like wind, crashes. And it was from all of that, it became like not just a necessity to try continue that just to get like make it a job. It was like, this is, I actually feel really passionate about this. And I don't know about you, but when I used to race, I mean, I still race against people, but I used to race, these World Cups, and you'd be like looking at Sam Hill, and I just was like, he was my hero, but you're still racing against him, and I just couldn't change that. Whereas now it's like I get to enjoy him, like enjoy my race runs, enjoy the race weekend, video all these people who I really look up to, but also still rub shoulders with. And
Totally, yeah.
now going forward, I'll be able to like do follow cams and loads of interviews, and there'll be like longer videos on that. So for me, it's like, it's been like a bit of it was a light bulb moment, but it wasn't like really, really fast. But when it did fully sink in, I was like, oh my God, I'm so lucky. This is great.
Totally, yeah. It's interesting, yeah, because part of the reason, like, Patch and Crystal set up this Contour Collective, and for me, it was like, I wanted to be involved, partly because I invested a lot. You probably feel exactly the same. You're talking about whether to stop racing or not or something. But to race at a World Cup level, even when you're just trying to qualify, that's a huge time investment. I mean, to get to that level, it's just work and time, and so it feels almost like growing up and stuff. Like I want to, and I'd imagine that's how you feel. Like I want to do something with that investment I made.
Yeah, because it's an incredible investment. And one of my sponsors, like I've ridden for FSA, this is coming on my 5th year, and they've been brilliant to me. Like honestly, along with Transition, they were like the first proper brands to sign me, and it was direct. I got to talk to brand managers in those companies, like Lars Sternberg in Transition, and then Mike Lawless in FSA. But he said to me, he's like, Dan, like you've nearly 20 years of experience in this industry, and you can start talking, use it, like let people know you've knowledge. And I think it is a kind of a confidence thing. And sometimes, like, unfortunately, a lot of us don't gain that confidence until like we're older. And you can't just like force people and just be like, you need to be more confident, believe in yourself, because confidence, it only shines when you truly believe in yourself or what you're talking about. And it only comes like, it depends on the person, but it just took ages for me. But we have a wealth of experience and knowledge, and bike setup, what works, what doesn't, everything. And it's just kind of using that or putting it in a shape that hopefully you can make a living out of what you love to do. But like a lot of people are happy kind of to leave it separate as well, like just keep their biking as a hobby.
Yeah, totally.
Because that might keep it fresh. Because there are people that get jaded, even though they were pros and they did actually earn money. Not like us that were like struggling to say get by for yonks. They get jaded because biking became their job. And it wasn't fun anymore, So that can happen. And I know no one ever has sympathy for people like that, but I do see it happen.
Totally, yeah. Yeah. That's interesting, yeah. And with you, I guess it's a fairly, I don't want to say it's uncommon, but a lot of people sort of who gravitate towards competing and being an athlete and stuff don't always have great communication skills or or skills in like necessarily marketing or understanding that kind of stuff. So I guess with yourself, you bring personality and something that people want to. You bring a skill as well as the writing. You just add in this other skill, and then suddenly you can make a career of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, and hopefully, and it so far has gone well. And I guess the next big test is to start this YouTube channel and bring people along for the ride and just be myself. And I think that's kind of scary, is like putting yourself out there properly. And this is my first podcast as well. And, already, 5 minutes in, I forgot we're recording. So I could listen back to this and go, oh my God, Dan, but the thing is, this is who I am, and you put yourself out there. And I think YouTube is an incredibly brave platform because you can't hide behind anything.
Totally, yeah.
And there are lots of people out there that love throwing stones. So you like going forward, yeah. I like definitely have to be more brave. But I mean, in person, I talk to everyone. When I was filming today, like people walking their dogs by, and John's like, "Can you walk back up?" And I'm there petting the dog and
Yeah.
chatting. So this is why I guess going forward, like I need to start this, even if I'm going to get rinsed, because it's who I am. I am a chatty guy. I'm social, and yeah, it's just like for me, it makes sense, and that's why like the World Enduro stuff I really enjoy, because before it was like, hello Sam Hill, please can I get a picture of you or like a video of you, and now it's just like, hey man, I'm just gonna go down ahead of you so I can get this. He's like, yeah, cool, and it's just nice because I actually really enjoy
Yeah,
it.
totally. I'd imagine as well, it's kind of, it's made, because like, as this is probably, I'd imagine the same for you, but when I was racing the World Cups, I was just a piece of shit. Like as far as anyone there was concerned. I remember going to the Shimano tent once, and they said they were going to fix my brakes, and then I came back, and my bike was the only this like lonely bike hanging on one of the things, and I was like, "Oh, did you get a chance to look at the brakes?" And he was like, "No." You couldn't have been any more humiliating or rude. And then I just like sort of like solemnly take my bike back. And I think that as well is something that you kind of, as like grow older and you kind of put things in perspective a little bit more. But I'd imagine for yourself, it makes the World Endurance more fun because you're kind of like, you have a more of a place there, like.
Yeah, and it's nice to feel part of that and feel. I'd never call it a clique because I do not want cliques. Cliques aren't inclusive, and I don't want anyone to ever feel like they're an outcast or whatever. But yeah, selfishly, it's actually kind of nice because I feel like my life at World Enduros is easier now. Okay, I'm busy, like I'm mentally drained by the end of a race weekend. I'm physically fine because I love cycling, but it's just the brain like going 90, seeing any good rider, getting all those like post or pre-race interviews, scouting, like seeing new talent like shine through and making sure they get a little shout out on Instagram, because I don't want to do that classic like, here's your top 5 and that's the only people you'll see. Now obviously I have a bit of a like thing I need to stick to, a list, but I can deviate, they trust me at this point. But yeah, it is nicer now that I guess like everyone kind of knows me, and the pink bike thing is blown that up a bit more, and I guess it's advantageous for people not to be mean to me, because they like, if I didn't like you, I might be a petty person and not put you in. Now I'm not like that, because if you're riding well or you have a cool crash, once you're okay, I'm gonna put you in and I'll airdrop you the clip. Like I don't really get into that stuff, but it is nicer. But I do think that's like, sometimes we create our own barriers because it's scary to be amongst when you're at these like world events. You're like, I am at the pinnacle. Oh my God, should I be here? I shouldn't be here. So sometimes we create our own boundaries, and then sometimes like people do as well. Either they're such serious racers and they're in their own head, so when you say hi, they literally just goes, or they do kind of like themselves, maybe a bit too much because they're fast on a bike. But I don't really care how fast you are on a bike if you're not nice. Like,
Absolutely.
I'm just not into that like at all. So yeah, I probably went on a tangent there.
I can't remember even the question. It was all good though. How much do the results matter to you now?
Now, do you know what though? I think I'll probably, I reckon I'll try to do better results this year than I did last year. Last year was kind of a weird year, and I felt like kind of like was a bit of a write off. And then I didn't tell the guys in Pink Bike that I was going to try like head cam riders and get some interviews. So when I did turn up with all that content, they're like, oh, this is great. And that's kind of where the YouTube thing's going to go this year because of that. But now that I kind of know what I need to do on a media point of view, I'm like, right, where do I need to be on my bike and fitness and my arms? Because I usually get a bit of pretty bad arm pump. But my goal is actually to get lighter than I usually come into World Endurance about 85 kgs, and my goal is to get down to 80. And I remember back when I raced down, I didn't really suffer from arm pump, and I was around 80 or 78 kg. So that's kind of like that kind of falls back into the quarantine goals and stuff. That's a personal goal I'm chipping away at. And so from that point of view, in a non-pressurized kind of way, I want to get like top 40s every World Cup, World Enduro, which, believe me, you want to be moving, is highly competitive. It's like they're incredible riders. But I would genuinely be happy with that, because I will have very busy practice days. And even the race days themselves, regardless of my race runs, I need to stay on top of it. So I'd be happy with that. And then, an Irish perspective, like, we'll see whatever Irish races happen, but I reckon I might try, ruin Greg in a race or two. There's, the competitive side of me isn't like a linear thing like it used to be, where I was just like very competitive. That was it. It has changed, and I feel now, because I don't have the pressure of knowing I have to compete to earn my dinner, I can actually enjoy competition in a more healthy way. Because sometimes being highly competitive is it's not good for your self-worth, because you kind of hate yourself a lot. You're like, you're not good enough, and that's not like, why can't we like ourselves a bit more?
Totally, yeah.
Like, it's okay to like yourself and go, no, I'm good, or I'm good enough. I know it's a bit like,
it's funny though, because probably like we've been doing these podcasts, and most of them, I think all of them have been with racers, and I'll quite often ask, like, how did you get into it? And people are like, oh, then I just started racing. Like, it was just a sort of like, they don't like, because most people, because I'm the same. Like, my girlfriend sort of slags me off for having opponents and being being competitive and stuff, and I can't help but, like, I don't competitive people can be a bit and annoying, and I don't really I don't want to I don't want to like identify with it, but I know, like, I am. Whenever I get into anything or whatever, I just start like doing it really kind of intensely and stuff. I forgot actually where I was going to go with that. But that I think that's what it was. It's just, that's not, it's actually, I don't think it's that normal. And it's just something that within our circles of people that race, we kind of think it's more normal than it actually is. But the psychological consequences of it can be like really harsh, because if you're really competitive and you're putting your whole like identity onto race results and you're not doing that well, then you're not much at all,
Yeah, you have broken yourself down, and no one else has like you have, and like, valuing yourself is really important, and friendships. And I guess, like, I talked to Greg about this a good bit. Like, he's got such a level head on him, and he thinks like one of the big components of why, say for instance, we're still able to have a lot of friends in the sport even though we race against each other, is because it's an individual sport. We race against the clock. And it kind of takes out, like, nearly like, say, parents taking sides on a siblings fight. The clock decides. You're not elbow to elbow with somebody, and because they got the elbow in front of you, they were able to get into corner first and you crashed. It's different. And that helps, I think, smoothing things out a bit more. There's less enemies. So even though we're competitive, there's far worse sports out there for the way people behave. But I was watching, like, there was an interview, an Irish comedian, Tommy Tiernan, has a talk show, and he was interviewing a top golfer, and he said, like, what happens when you do bad in a golf game? He's like, oh, I'm in an awful mood for days or even weeks, and my other half has to put up with that. And I don't really suffer from that, and maybe when I was younger, but then I just drink loads of cans with my mates, my normal friends. But no, I think either as I've gotten older, I've kind of either gotten a bit wiser or less competitive, or else I've just realized that, like, there's always another race. and there's some things that matter more. And yeah, you can be mad, but do not be that person that throws their bike into a hedge and starts screaming.
Winning or losing as well.
Yeah.
You know, there's that poem, the Rudyard Kipling poem, I don't know if you like, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat both imposters just the same. I was listening to a podcast with a surfer, like one of Kelly Slater, like one of the big sort of surfers, and he was talking about like the first competition he won, and he's in the car with his dad, and you know he's like he's got his competition on his lap, and he's looking over at the like car next to him, and he's kind of looking at them in this kind of slightly altered way, obviously, and his dad picks up on it, and his dad was like, "See those people in that car? They don't give a shit." About surfing, they don't give a shit that you just won that competition. Like no one cares, and it's that balance of, on the one hand, you know, being proud of yourself or whatever, but on the other hand, like no one really cares that much. Not to an extent that, you know, you should pump yourself up too much or belittle yourself too much. You know.
Yeah, and definitely, like, I think it's more applicable to the vast majority of racers now, going up into or riders in general, but going up into the very top percentile of racers. Some of those people, their personality, the way it's worked out, they need that inflated ego, that arrogance, self-belief to become the rider that gets those results. So some of it goes hand in hand, but yeah, I mean, like, overall, we all love bikes, and there is no point letting, you know, being so competitive that you alienate yourself or others. You know, for instance, if there's a platform at the top of a track, these are all going to drop in. Like, I don't always drop in first with whoever I'm riding with. You know, I'm like, Nick, do you want to go ahead? Or Al, like, you know, whoever it is. Like, I think that's actually a pretty valuable practice. I don't know if I did it consciously or unconsciously, but I realized it one day. I was like, oh, great, I'm not one of those people. They're like, well, I'm the fastest out of my friend group, so I have to go first all the time. I think, like, little things like that. Maybe you could even do it consciously. Like, maybe if you're listening to this and you haven't turned it off yet, you could. That would be like a nice little exercise if you feel like you're ever like becoming too competitive. Just like follow your friends.
Totally, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I was bad for that. Probably always going first.
Look, a lot of us do this stuff like subconsciously. I know there's loads of, like, my friend Trish says, like, there's so many guys that just drop in front of her and then she's just up their arse.
Yeah.
You know, on a track, because they're like, oh my god, I just presume I'm better. So there's loads of it. I think we could all practice being a little bit more humble, though.
Absolutely. Dan, I think I could talk to you all day, but I've got just a couple questions left.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to keep these within an hour. If they're more, I did my own podcast and they were like 2-3 hours, and I think people just are like, nah, I'm not even going to start that. So, what's your plans for this year?
So this year is, I guess, now that, like, my fitness is like up to a good level, have all the bikes. Next week, once I finish this video project, I'm going to start videoing some YouTube stuff. I'm going to start off with like non-threatening bike checks, and then I'm going to go from there and see what happens. But yeah, that's something that's like a little bit scary for me because it's new, but I just said I was going to do it, and then I'm just going to have to live up to it. And then, yeah, once we hit the race season, hopefully, which is mid-June, I'll be away to all the World Enduros, the ones that are left, which are all European. I think entries actually, reserved rider entries open today. So I should get on that later. But yeah, go do those races. And when I'm at those, I'll be like proper kind of serious as far as like, I have a lot of stuff to get done. Without even like involving me cycling the bike. So that will be like, they'll be pretty intense. I'm really excited for them, though. I hope they go down well. Like I was saying earlier, they're going to be YouTube videos for Pink Bike that will be like basically a bit of everything, like following some top riders. I'll go to key sections on each stage, get riders riding them, and then their thoughts, I guess, on each section. Because sometimes you do get clusters of people stopping in an area because it's mental, and it's nice to just, we talk casually anyway, but no one's ever filming the conversation. So basically just leveling up as far as like what people will get to see, and make it very much like a point of view, or what it's like to be there in person. So that's that. And then I'm gonna probably come up with some weird challenges. Like I want to do some long distance stuff. I got a gravel bike, so I want to do some weird stuff on that, like big rides. And then I want to do some time tracks and see what I can do on my normal mountain bike, and then what I can do on that, which would be funny. And then the road bike, I want to even do bigger cycles because it's lighter. Basically, yeah, just all sorts of bikes and diversify. I've no problem getting into Lycra and doing a big spin. Totally. And hopefully everyone listening has gotten to that point where they're mature enough that they can realize that all types of cycling
are cool,
are good.
And then finally, what advice would you give someone trying to make a living in mountain biking?
I would say don't think that's a really good question, and it's probably quite complicated because it can vary for everyone. But I would say follow as many different types of riders as you can, and watch them with your eyes open. So you're actually trying to see what makes them unique or special or sponsorable. And then try to either emulate it or at least turn it into something that feels unique to you or true to you. And like I said, my example of that was realizing that racing, although I was quick, I wasn't quite the quickest on a world level. So I had to rethink my approach. And then I know it seems a bit mental because I love chatting. I was like, oh, my personality, I'll go down that avenue. But it just took a very long time for the penny to drop. But I guess my point is, you can actually change this around in a month or two. You just need to open your eyes to what your qualities are as a person and as a rider, and then what you want out of the bike industry. So like, could you palette my job, which would be running around the hill nearly like a half, nearly like Sven Martin and all the photographers, like their job is to be at these races and get pictures of top people or sponsored riders for different brands. And I'm there in a way to do that, but just I'm also there to race and get everything in between. So some people would hate to do that maybe, or they feel like maybe that's beneath them. And it's like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm going to race, and I don't like, why would you do that? So you just figure out what works for you. And maybe it is like starting your own YouTube channel and just like not having a strict goal, maybe just like a personal goal, but not a strict, like, I need to do this to get sponsored. Like there's a guy in America who just builds a new feature in his big garden, and each YouTube channel is a new feature, and he discusses it and builds it. And he's just really nice, and he makes great stuff, and he's a normal rider, but he's doing amazing now. He's got a really big following. So I guess at the end of the day, you're going to have to be you, or else it's not going to work in the long run, is it? I don't think it can.
Yeah.
But also realize that the game has changed a lot, and like there's so many different social media platforms now, and there's people like making passive income because of their social media following, yeah, exactly. Or their YouTube account or whatever it is. So you can get to a point where you're self-sufficient and you don't even need a brand. Like Pilgrim doesn't have suspension sponsor. He's there cutting his forks with a bloody spoon and grinding them on the curb and then putting them into the bike, because that'll get views, and he'll earn more from the views on that video than if he rode for Fox.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity now, I think, for people in some ways. Yeah.
There's more opportunity, and also like the bike industry has gotten a lot bigger, and the bike brands are doing unbelievably well, because there is a lot of people that are earning money not directly through them, so they're not actually paying you, but you could have a great YouTube following, because you're getting paid through your following, and they're just giving you frames, so everyone's winning. Now if I had a big YouTube following, I would still be going to those brands and being like, hey,
yeah, absolutely,
cough up. But but yeah, like that's the thing is like there's definitely more money to be made like ever before.
You see,
But I guess that
Specialized just sponsored a Spanish football team. Yeah,
really
which I'd imagine would be a big, uh, like it's a
that would
big
be
kind of step up.
huge.
It's just interesting as well that they even think that it's worth marketing, a cycling brand in a. It says something I think of
So
how much cycling has grown.
I think sometimes it's about just the name. So they sponsor a team with whatever bikes that they are, but all those normal Joe soaps, don't have to be normal. I just mean like football punters,
Mm.
right? They're like, can't run anymore because like my bloody knee or my back hurts. I thought I'd get into bikes. Specialized sponsor that team. I've heard of them. So they go into the local bike shop. Do you sell Specialized?
Totally, yeah, it's association.
And if you start off with that question, there's a strong chance if they'll say yeah, and you will just go with a Specialized because it's all you know because you don't understand the sport. So that's why there's the argument that goes back to like why are top downers paid the most or more than any other rider, and it's because of the brand awareness and the reach, and it's not because they sell a downhill bike, which is a very, I guess another day we can have a chat about
I think
that
we'll
one.
need to.
But yeah, I think it's the reach that football team may have because of just the name, and it's not actually the product. It's just the possibility of low end bikes
Totally,
in
yeah.
future.
Cool. Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure, Dan. Thanks so much for coming on. It's really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, man. Cheers. That was good. I hope I hope that was good. Anyway.
It definitely was. Yeah, I think people liked it. All right. Thanks again. Hello. Welcome to the outro. The outro is a little bit different from the intro. I like to take a little bit of a more relaxed approach. I like to talk about my set and things that have changed. Nothing's really changed from last week. The sword's still there. There's a lot going on. You can't see it, but a lot messier here, and there's a lot more going on over here. But this little corner of the room is quite nice. I maybe just adjusted camera. Possibly not. Hopefully not. No, I haven't. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. Crystal tells me there was some technical problem. Obviously, I'm recording this before it's on YouTube, and before I've seen the full thing. So I've heard there was a technical problem. I really do apologize for that technical problem. It wasn't my fault. It, of course, was Crystal's fault. Any of these technical problems, just blame them on Crystal. That's what I do. It helps me. I would just channel your anger that way if you did have any anger. When Dan, I think there was a problem with his audio or something I hear. So completely Crystal's fault. Not due to a lack of professionalism on his part or our part, I will say. But still, I think it was internet connection. That's what it was. It was Dan Wolfe's internet connection. So to be honest, as much as I'd like to blame Crystal for the technical fault, if you were wanting to point the finger at someone, it would have to be Dan Wolfe's internet provider, which is maybe certainly less fun as far as I'm concerned. Finger pointing exercise. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for watching this far. Thank you for watching these stupid outros. If you enjoyed that episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. We will answer your questions. Greatly appreciate your feedback, and even more appreciate your subscriptions. So thanks for watching, and see you next week. Every Thursday, 6 o'clock, we are releasing these episodes, so stay tuned for more. And thanks for watching.